December 1944. Belgium was frozen hard enough to make steel complain. The German offensive in the Ardennes had thrown the Allied line into confusion, and the Third Army was turning north through snow, mud, and broken roads to reach Bastogne. Every gallon of fuel mattered, every crate of ammunition mattered, and every driver who could stay awake behind the wheel mattered. That was why the black truck companies were still moving when most men were trying to find shelter. They drove in blackout conditions. They drove past shell holes filled with ice. They drove with headlights covered, hands numb, eyes burning, listening for aircraft they could not see. Staff Sergeant Jonah Reeves had been awake nearly 18 hours when his convoy rolled back into the depot. 9 men, 3 trucks, a 12-hour run over roads that looked less like roads than arguments with the earth. They had delivered gasoline, mortar rounds, and winter rations to units that could not wait until morning. And when they finally stepped down from the cabs, there was one thing waiting. Not a medal, not a speech, a hot meal, stew, coffee bread warm enough to steam in the cold. For men who had been eating canned meat and crackers with diesel on their gloves, it looked like mercy. Then a white supply sergeant named Calvin Pike walked over. He had clean papers under one arm and a wool scarf tucked neatly into his collar. He looked at Reeves. Then he looked at the food, and he said the meal had been reallocated. Reeves asked to see the order. Pike said there was no time for that. Reeves said, "That meal is assigned to my crew." Pike answered, "Not anymore." No shouting, no fight, just 9 black soldiers standing in the cold, while the only hot food they had seen in 2 days disappeared behind a sentence that sounded official enough to punish. That night, Reeves and his men ate cold rations on the tailgate of a truck. The crackers snapped like thin wood. The meat came out of the can gray at the edges. No one said much, because tired men do not always have the strength to be angry out loud. But Reeves had enough strength left for one thing. He wrote a report, not a complaint, not a speech. A report, time of return, crew count, meal assignment, name of the supply sergeant. No written order produced. By noon the next day, that report was on a desk very few enlisted men ever reached. General George Patton read it once. Then he asked for the black sergeant who wrote it, not the white supply sergeant, not the officer in charge of the depot, Reeves. When Reeves entered the command post, his boots still carried Belgian mud. His jacket smelled of exhaust and cold wool. Maps covered the walls. Field telephones sat close enough to be grabbed without looking. Outside, the army was trying to move through winter before the Germans could close the road again. Patton sat behind the desk and studied Reeves like a man measuring a bridge before sending tanks across it. Then he said something Reeves had not expected. "Sit down, Sergeant." Reeves did not move at first. In 3 years wearing the uniform, he had stood in plenty of offices. He had been questioned, corrected, ordered, dismissed. No general had ever asked him to sit. Patton repeated it. "Sit down." So Reeves sat. The chair felt too low. The room felt too bright. Patton tapped one finger on the report. "Tell me what happened," Reeves told him. No decoration, no anger added for effect. He told him about the convoy, about the ice on the hills, about one truck sliding sideways near a blown culvert, about the men taking turns slapping their own faces to stay awake, about the field kitchen holding food for them when they returned, about Pike walking over with no order and taking it, about 9 men eating cold rations after hauling fuel through a battle that did not pause for hunger. Patton listened. He did not interrupt. That almost made it worse. When Reeves finished, The room went quiet except for the field telephones and the faint crackle of a stove. Patton asked, "How many men?" "9, sir." "How long on the road?" 12 hours on that run, sir. 18 awake. "How long have you been doing this work?" "Since France, sir." "Night routes?" "Yes, sir." "Under fire?" "When the road chooses it, sir?" For the first time Patton looked away from the report. Then he asked the question that stayed with Reeves longer than the war itself. "What would be fair?" Reeves thought he had misheard him, sir. "What would be fair punishment for Sergeant Pike?" Reeves felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, exactly. Something older. Something trained into a man by every county courthouse, every white counter, every uniformed voice that had ever told him where to stand and when to speak. He said, "That is not my place, sir," Patton answered. "Today it is." Reeves stared at the map pins on the wall. Red, blue, black. Whole armies reduced to little heads of metal. He thought about his men holding cold crackers in gloves stiff with frost. He thought about Pike saying "not anymore" as if hunger could be reassigned by tone of voice. He thought about the road. The road was the thing. Not a lecture. Not a fine. Not a paper reprimand hidden in a folder. The road. Reeves said, "Make him ride the route, sir." Patton's expression did not change. Reeves kept going. "Not for an hour. Not as a passenger. Put him behind a wheel at night. Let him learn what it costs to bring something in before he decides who earned it." Patton leaned back. For a moment. Reeves could not tell whether he had gone too far. Then Patton said, "That is an answer from a man who understands the work." He wrote one sentence across the bottom of the report. "Dismissed, Sergeant. Get some sleep." Reeves saluted and left without knowing whether anything would happen. That was usually the part where hope became foolish. But this time, something did happen. Calvin Pike was called in before evening. The meeting did not last long. Patton did not thunder. Men who expected thunder often missed the real danger in him. He became exact. He had the report. He had the kitchen log. He had the depot manifest. There had been no new order, no emergency reassignment, no clerical confusion. Pike had taken food assigned to a black convoy crew and covered the theft with rank, race, and a lie dressed up as procedure. Pike tried to explain. He said the line had been unclear. He said the kitchen staff must have misunderstood. He said he did not know the drivers had just come in. Patton raised one hand. Pike stopped. "You will report to Sergeant Reeves's truck company tomorrow evening," Patton said. "You will serve that crew a hot meal from the field kitchen, properly requisitioned, properly accounted for. Then you will ride their route." Pike blinked. "Sir, I am supply staff." "Not for the next 24 nights, sir. I'm not a convoy driver. You are about to become one." The next evening, Pike crossed the depot carrying the meal himself. No clerk beside him. No private ordered to do the uncomfortable part. Just Pike. A lidded food container, and a line of black drivers checking chains, tires, canvas, and cargo straps under a sky the color of old metal. Reeves saw him coming and said nothing. The crew watched with the cold patience of men who had learned not to waste words too early. Pike set the food on the hood of the lead truck. Steam lifted into the winter air. For a second, nobody moved. Then Pike looked at Reeves. "I took food that belonged to your men," he said. The words sounded stiff, like boots not broken in. It was wrong. Reeves held his eyes for a long moment. Then he said, "Serve it." So Pike served, one mess tin after another. He poured coffee with hands that did not know what to do with shame. The men ate before the run. No speeches, no forgiveness handed out for the comfort of the man who had asked for it too late. Just hot food properly earned, properly served. When the tins were empty, Reeves nodded toward the second truck. "Get in." The first night broke Pike quickly. Not his body, his certainty. He learned that a supply route on a map was a clean black line. On the road it was a frozen ditch waiting for a tired wheel. It was a bridge with one side shelled away. It was a hill where the truck lost traction, unless the driver knew exactly when to ease off. It was a blackout turn marked only by a tree stump and the memory of the man in front. Pike missed the turn after midnight. The convoy lost 35 minutes. No one cursed him. That was worse. They corrected him, turned him around, and kept moving because fuel did not care who was embarrassed. By the fourth night, his hands were cracked from cold. By the seventh, he stopped asking why they could not wait until morning. By the 10th, he understood why the drivers drank coffee even when it tasted burned. By the 15th, he could hear the difference between distant artillery and shells beginning to walk closer. By the 20th, he helped change a tire in darkness while men held canvas over a lamp so aircraft would not catch the glow. On the 24th night, Pike drove the lead truck for 17 miles without being corrected once. Reeves never praised him. The road had already done that. After the punishment ended, Pike went back to the depot. On paper, almost nothing had happened. Temporary convoy familiarization, short-term route training, no court, martial, no public humiliation, no grand statement about justice in an army that was still segregated. The paperwork was small because armies often make their moral moments look administrative. But the depot changed. Not enough to make history books notice. Enough for the men who depended on it. Allocations were written cleaner. Meal counts matched crew counts. Black drivers stopped hearing that supplies had been needed elsewhere. Only after they arrived. Pike did not become warm. He did not become a hero. He did not become proof that the system was fair. He became careful. And in a supply depot during the Battle of the Bulge, careful could mean a man got fed before he had to drive into the dark again. Reeves kept driving through the rest of the Ardennes, through roads where fuel trucks were worth more than comfort, through nights when the cold came up through the pedals and settled in the bones of his feet. The infantry got the photographs. The tanks got the newsreels. The generals got the books. But the army moved because men like Reeves kept putting gasoline and ammunition where maps said they had to be. Not once. Not when the weather was good. Over and over. Until the road itself seemed like another enemy that had to be defeated every night. Years later, back in Alabama, Reeves did not tell the story often. He worked in a repair shop, raised children, fixed engines other men had given up on. He lived in a country that had asked him to help defeat tyranny overseas, and then expected him to lower his eyes at home. Some evenings, when the house was quiet, his son would ask about the war. Reeves would talk about the cold first. Always the cold. He would talk about the way fingers stopped feeling like fingers after enough hours on a steering wheel. He would talk about artillery at night, about learning the sound of distance, about how a man could be afraid and still keep the truck moving because somebody ahead needed what he carried. Only later would he talk about the office, the maps, the mud on his boots, the general behind the desk, and the question. He asked me what was fair, Reeves would say. Not proudly, not softly, carefully. Like the sentence still had weight in his hands. His son once asked whether Pike had changed. Reeves thought about it. Then he said, "I don't know what changed inside him. That belongs to God and to Pike." But the depot changed. He looked down at his own hands that had held steering wheels through blackout roads, hands that had written one report instead of swallowing one more insult. The men got what they were owed. Then he added the part that mattered most. It was not that the world became fair. It was that, for one afternoon, a man with the power to ignore me asked me to name fairness out loud. And once Reeves had said it, nobody in that room could pretend he did not know what justice sounded like.